back in 2011, we were just calling it the Gertrude Stein Project. It was somewhat subversive to begin with, because where we come from at the University of Alberta, there's a professional acting training program that's quite extensive and very strong, but not a tradition. And in all of our teaching, we kind of go a little bit against that or around that. And I wanted to be able to create a piece that was just a creation to begin with, that we didn't have anything we didn't have a script or anything to start with. So already that was trying to find a way to be able to bring ideas of intermediality into our professional program, sort of through the back door and just sort of gently in there. So what I knew I wanted to work with was Stein's work in some way. Initially I was going to do a play, and then I just thought, no, I don't want to do that, I want to start from scratch. But I really wasn't sure how to be able to start bringing this about. I had spent a summer in Paris and had been taking these walks from her house in various directions of different friends that she had. And eventually those walks found their way in. There was a series of walks across the stage that we saw, one in a little clip. But what really sparked this, and it was shortly before we were to start, I was on my way over to the Beinecke at Yale to take a look at all the Stein work. But before I went, I was reading through, I've read through books and things, but I was coming across Alice's letters. And I was getting near the end of the book. Gertrude's already passed away. And she mentions in there about a young man from Columbia University who had contacted her and said he had found all these scraps of paper and that he thinks that they're the notebooks of Gertrude Stein, and he would like to be able to spend time with Alice. And as I'm reading this, and his name's Leon, I'm like, okay, that's famous Leon. And I get a little further, and I see his last name, and that was one of my old teachers. Mm-hmm. So when I was back at Yale, he was my dramaturgy teacher. And I knew he liked Stein. I knew he kind of knew quite a bit about Stein. I had no idea how intertwined he was. So he ended up spending a year with Alice when he went over to Paris. And so when I made that connection, I went, okay, I got to talk to Leon. So I went off, as I said, to Yale to take a look at the archive, which then found its way into the piece itself. And then after that, I flew over to LA to meet with him. He was in his 90s. And I spent a week with him, and we went through all the material because he never ended up publishing all this material. Alice initially said, please wait until I'm gone. And then he waited, and then he just never got it up and running. So there was even in the New Yorker questions, did it even exist? It exists. It all exists. So all the transcripts of his talk with her. The essence of that, though, is that Gertrude Stein, during her salons, was not just doing her own writing late at night. What she was actually doing was she was analyzing every person that came to her salons. There's 400 analysis, analytical, that she was developing her own kind of psychology. And it was all written in code. So part of Leon's task was, how do I break this code? He got pretty far before he met with Alice, but then he needed to go through all 1,200, 1,500 notes to be able to really break it and exactly what it was. Alice had never seen these, other than they were up in 2 big bags of paper. And so she was very anxious to get them back from Leon, because he had got them, he found them in the back. It looks like you know the story. He found them in the back at the Beinecke, but they weren't in the normal collection of Gertrude Stein. And what he did, he was very clever, is he went to Alice and he said, okay, I'm not going to give it all to you. We'll go through these one by one. And she said, well, I'm not going to have time to do it one by one. And he said, because she was doing her cookbook, he said, I'll type up your cookbook at night and we'll go through this one by one. So that took a year to do. And so we used all of Leon's material as the basis for this piece itself. So there's 3 levels to the piece. There's the story of Leon and Alice and their meeting and discussing of the work. There's a couple of things that are improvised. Most of it's word for word from whatever Alice says, she did say. And then there's the Gertrude Gertrude, Alice love story. And then there's just the act of writing, because the act of writing, not only Gertrude's writing, but the actual act of writing became very central for this piece. And those are all interwoven. We tried to make like a composition out of this. So Lynn's going to talk about the how we started up the vocabulary, because when we met, we had 10 days before we got into tech, and they needed to learn about Stein. We had Stein School at night, in which Leon had recorded things that he could talk to them about, and we created a vocabulary to be able to base our choreography together with, and to create from that. So Lynn.
Okay, I think I'd like to say also, to keep adding to it, that one of the things that was the most subversive about the whole act of creating the Gertrude Stein project was we all began in a room together at the same time. And this is a really difficult thing to do inside a university system, because they want everyone to know a little bit in advance. So Bo is excellent at doing as much of the prep with all the people who had to be involved and keeping them at bay until the actual moment where we were in the room together and we could agree together that we wouldn't know what was going to happen. We wouldn't know what we were going to do, but we would discover it together. And for young actors too, that's also very difficult because, well, for anyone, it's like you're in a bit more vulnerable position. But it was something that they embraced very quickly. So in the room together, we all began that way. One of the things that helped the actors understand how to create a vocabulary together was working physically to create what we ended up calling an alphabet. So the way we began that was, first of all, talking, the first scene that you'll see as you come into the theater is actors lying down. So they're lying down, first of all, horizontal to you on a piece of paper. So the first image is this, which reflects something we talked about a lot, which is an old process in yoga called Yoga Nidra. And Yoga Nidra, I don't know if any of you are familiar with it, it's a way where you can visualize your whole body system to align your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. But what you're actually doing is mapping, sequencing your whole body. You start with the right side, and you move to the left side, then you move down the center, and then you breathe up, and then you just feel the weight on the floor. So it's a way for the actors and for you to have a map of your body that incorporates your imagination, how you understand your body, how you understand your body weight. So that was the first, we all did that together, and we all literally use yoga see. So they loved that talk, that they could see. And they could be doing a show in some kind of forum that actually put everyone quietly on the floor, which also aren't open. So then we decided together, all the decisions were made collaboratively. I said, why don't you create a way to write with your body? So the way that happened was we decided, well, why don't we start with the alphabet? And so why don't we create, each one of them created their own alphabet. So each alphabet had its own logic, which related to how they could create with the body a system of logic that for them would be able to write in space. So this is a kind of thought process that I call saturation, which is like film and like video. It's how we can saturate an image into our body that then can be projected in space. So that's what we work with. So for instance, if this was an alphabet, I would say, okay, this is just an alphabet that I'll create, which is like A, and then B, and C, and D, and maybe this is E, this is F, and this is G, and then this is my H, this is I, and then this is the H, I, this is J, K, L. And so as you're doing it, you have to actually walk through these processes physically. M, and then N, and L, and then O, and P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, let's say, and then W, X, and X, Y, Z. So let's say that's the way you could, that's my alphabet. And everyone, each one of these 12 people would have their own alphabet. So each one of them could spell one word in various ways. So that's how we could work into, I could say spell sign, and we could have 12 different variations of how sign could be spelled. Or then we created one alphabet that was the same for everyone. So we would have a base where this alphabet could be shared, where if we wanted to do that, this could happen. So, and then I would say, so let's say I take the alphabet you just saw, and I'm going to spell my name, which is Lynn. So my L was 3 steps forward, and my I was here, and my N was here. So if I did that straight up, it would just be this walking forward, this here, and this turning. But I could say to them, okay, I'm going to take your writing and let's really spread it out. So make it really dimensional in the space, so hugely bigger. And then I could also move, and then O could circle around like this. So this could be cursive writing. So I could say, there's a whole series where it goes across the room, so that could be cursive. Or I could say, make it super condensed, and it would just be L-I-N. So I could use various qualities, and this language could be either extended or brought in. And so we worked through the actual language in that way. Do you have any questions about that? Okay. What this actually also does in terms of saturation is it allows the actor to think with their own logic. So they have their own logic, and it allows someone from the outside to direct that, sharing a common vocabulary that is unique. So each thought process of each person is considered because they created the logic for the alphabet to create the writing live. And also it gives them agency and a kind of freedom to feel that what their language is doing is fitting into what the whole thing will then become. So that was one of the ways we worked the choreographic language into what we did. And then we created another scene that you saw in the first script called the working clip. And it was basically, there's no way I could have figured that out on my own because it was mathematical and was combining the language of the text with various ways to move two lines in space that constantly changed and rearranged. And all those arrangements were taken from cues from the text that each person added to figure out. It took a huge long time to figure out what it would be in terms of the rhythm in the text, but that was another way we collaborated live inside the room to create what the languages would be. So that's what we did together. And we also created an archive vocabulary, which was archiving. We took the actual movements that Bo actually did in the archives, and we worked with those movements to create something that could be repeatable. And then we created an archive, a live archive of them talking to each other, telling them how to do it, which was creating another kind of oral archive. So there was a lot of ways we layered and played with physicality and text, and how those things can talk to each other. How text can be very physical and physicality can be very textual. There's one scene where actually the tech actor and they're actually
we're not showing that clip.
Yeah, creating that. So that's That's a little bit about, yeah.
This scene should be called Le Malgache. Because we're calling it archive fever. Okay, here we go.
One of the things that we're kind of interested in with this is that the intermedial is not just about all the technology that was in the piece, but is about the actor themselves as the technology. That's where, you know, from what Stein has written, has been put through the body and found another way to be transposed.
So in a sense, we all have data inside us that's alive, and how do we translate or decode or create a common code? Can everyone see? Yeah, I'm gonna move.
Yeah, we're gonna know the email exchange.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So this is just a little email exchange between us. Just I had already arrived in Paris or in Venice or somewhere, and you were back in Montreal, and we just thought this kind of talks a little bit about the way we communicate to each other. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so seems to me the body, the page, space to imagine from, the lines of movement on stage, all parallel and reflect various perspectives on how thought, thinking, moving write themselves down. Opening image of the body on a page with large square of light in back. A body on a page, a large square of light, a page of light, on stage, empty and full. It's what the whole piece keeps doing, emptying and filling, with words, with images, with moving, with speaking, with writing, with walking. So many vertical and horizontal grid patterns. The body's in a line, creates a page, a curtain, a walk, creates cross and weave, until a kind of chaos breaks out in the rehearsal scene, a relief from the frame, finishing with a face, framed, speaking about love, a life well lived. What does this have to do with actors and projections? Archiving acting? Putting yourself in relation to something else?
The potential of the white light, large, looming, empty, but yes, filled with images from it. One moment stood out for me on this viewing. When Alice says Gertrude would write the text from one copybook into another, I recall being struck by when I was going over her notebooks in the Beinecke, she would begin by writing it in a normal size, and then she would copy her text into the next notebook using a larger, quicker handwriting, transposing and transforming 2, 3, 4 times until she arrived at her final text. This is very much what we were doing, writing and one technology to another, the hand to the pen, to the paper, to the body, to the page, to the stage, to the screen, from the archive, the microfiche, the clothing, touch, movement, senses, memories, turning, never still. This was the code of the performance, one technology to another.
Yes, it's a translation process. The body and the page, a locus to imagine from. Technology as translation, as imagination.
Us in relation to Gertrude, Leon in relation to Gertrude, Alice in relation to Gertrude. I'm thinking again of the white rectangle of light. It's straight lines, but in front, yes, sometimes a grid, but also circles. Gertrude's circles around the table, the circles of the cursive, the circle of Leon to Gertrude through Alice, and somehow, without my knowing it, until I read about Leon and Alice's letters, that circle found its way to me, and through the production, to all of us. It's as if Gertrude's circle is still going on. We're just going to show that just a couple of clips of Lyd was talking about the archive, and I mentioned about being in the Beinecke, and one of the very first things I did when I finally got her folders and things, I went into the room. I'd never done one of these rare book research trips before, and I was on surveillance camera, as a lot of you know from there, and I just put down the pencil, and also there was a bit of an echo, and I got very excited about the echo. And then I got very excited about how the box opened, and they thought I was crazy in the surveillance thing, and I would just pull it out, I put it back. It was even before I actually looked at anything. So I became very interested in what the sounds were, what the movements were, what the other people in the room were doing, and this eventually found its way into the piece. The very beginning of this is the surveillance camera that would be like we would have in the Beinecke, but in this case, it's now Leon back in the early 50s, finding the material and going through the pieces of paper. So one of the challenges with this piece was trying to get the actors to be able to move slow enough so that what we were really concerned about was what was going on in the screen. And we got them to slow down somewhat, but we wanted even half the time of that. And that was very hard for them to do. They could not really put together that they were creating another image, and that was the primary image. So that was an interesting challenge for us. That goes right into the archive piece, of which we just, with all the movements that were done in the Beinecke, we created a piece out of that. So.
Pablo, Matisse, Stern, Leo, Leon, BB.
This character is just kind of like almost a go-between between the dancers and him. He's sort of an echo of Leon. Doesn't exist in real life.
In his book, there was a discussion of pairs of people and their relation. Alice, Pablo, Fernand, Sally and I, Leo and I, Harriet and Alice, Annette and Lars, Matisse and Mrs. Mike and Sally. Sally again. Sally is Jane Sands, Leo is Lars, Fernand is Fernand, Pablo is Paul, Matisse is Cordell Stinker, Annette Rosenstein is Margaret. These characters. This course from all Bazarovs from Stern to Leo. Bazarovian, Anglo-Saxon. 20 years ago, the fever to be an Anglo-Saxon and a gentleman for whom indeed should wish to be an Anglo-Saxon. Much Leo is writing about David. David Person? Well, David Person, much but not. Leon David Person speaks to the melancholy in 30 that is so common like mine, Leon, Dede, Pablo, Matisse, everybody. Everybody. David is everybody. David Hirschland is everybody. Wow. What does this have to do with this? Have to do with these? Have to do with this? There's something here. I know there's something here.
It's the bottom right. More. When you go to the person, you're going to say, I have more folders than you. Make sure that your feet and hands are spread. Take the box, slide it over to the front of your desk, run your hands to the top of the box. Open the lid, place the lid. Place your hands beside the box. Run your hands back to your paper and bring your feet together. Stand up, move your papers to the right, lean forward, place your hands on the bottom of the box, hold the box towards you. Look up.
And so we're going to show one more clip. It's at the end of coming close to the end of the piece, where it was a place where we had a little bit of trouble, a lot in getting or working with the cast to slow down enough. What you're going to see is the image of a silhouette coming into the screen that creates a kind of like an old movie studio effect. So it's you're seeing silhouettes coming into the screen and being framed by the screen.
The tail end of this, as close as I can get that.
And we would it to much slower.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much for this very, very dynamic presentation. It's really wonderful to see so many kids and have a precise idea of what you created. I'm going to open the floor for questions, and please ask them in French if you'd like to. I'll be happy to translate, or English. And I actually have a question of my own that I wanted to stick in first, so you should excuse me. In the last few sections that we saw, I was really fascinated by the relation between reading and writing, and clearly in your creation of an alphabet, the idea that you're writing something with the body seems essential. And I was wondering how you see the reading of a spectator. To what extent do you read this as a freedom? Or to what extent is that act of reading already inscribed in what you create?
I think we're definitely reading that open. That it's sort of, it all runs from one to the other, so it's like they have to read it. And those that knew a lot about Stein were getting certain things, they were getting a lot of the small references and everything. But even those that didn't know anything about Stein, they were still putting pieces together for themselves. So it's kind of all from different perspectives and angles. So I think the audience had to be proactive for it.
But they're also reading the space that something isn't happening too. So they're reading the blank space as well as the space that's active, and they're reading the pauses. So the space is part of what you're reading, not just what's written on it, but what's not written on it. So that's also the idea of this notion of saturation, how you can imagine your own system and imagine it interacting with others with pauses in between. So I think that an intention of an actor and the cast on stage, if that intention has a kind of clarity and imagination and logic, that clarity and that intention will be as the audience is watching. And sometimes we're not knowing. So it's like suspended writing.
At times that the notion, what you discovered in the transcriptions were Stein keeps copying
Yeah.
the text and enlarging it
Yeah.
from the reading in detail. At times it felt like it was performed as well. You know, you spoke about that when you enlarge the movements
Yeah.
to kind of reflect that. So it's the intermediate aspect became not just a function of space, but a function of time, which is the harder part to work with actors, to stretch out the time. It's not just various spaces that they have to occupy or moving from the three-dimensional to the two-dimensional. It's also moving across time, time codes.
And how you can feel that time in your body with other people and an audience.
We had two Gertrudes. We had a younger and an older, and two Alices, younger and older, and Leon, sort of one main Leon, and then this kind of echo of Leon. So we would have in the walks across the stage, sometimes there was a mix of people. They weren't necessarily always of the same age, even, so that there was always a sense of going back and forth in time, and even splintering the time, and being able to do that.
And the cast that was literally dancing most of the time, they were like these things that were always filtering and transforming with whatever was around them.
And they were the actors of the acting program, so not trained dancers. And so that was a whole other journey with them.
Yeah, I have a question because I understand, I'm sorry, I wasn't here at the beginning of your talk, but I understand you're part of the same institution, right?
Yes.
And I was wondering if you work together, and in what way? For example, the definitions you gave from that. Yeah. Do you take this into account, or is there like a dialogue between the practical work or the creative work and what you do? And yeah, how does it interact? And another question I have would be, what would be like the ideal training day of an interactive actor?
Yeah.
So sorry, that's the question.
I can speak to the first.
Yeah, you go for the first,
Yes.
and we'll go for the second, yeah.
Being here doing this panel is part of that collaboration. We you know, and in our department we have a lot of these collaborations, but often in the context of conferences and sometimes projects. I was not specifically involved in the British Stein project, but in the future incarnations, perhaps you know, there's room for that, definitely. But that crossing over between critical theory and performance theory and performance creation and research is how we work. And, you know, I think that great divide is no longer operational. It's not operational for me. I don't think it's operational for anybody else.
I didn't feel there was so much dialogue. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I express that sincerely, but between what you could define, which seemed not so familiar to me and very interesting, and the way you explain your work.
Yeah. Well, we worked together on the
Yeah.
project, and so I think there still is a bit of that, like as opposed to you being involved from the very beginning. And although I'm familiar with some of the references in terms of the definitions, while I'm making something, it's not necessarily what I'm thinking about mostly with that is just the transposing of the media through the body into something else. And hopefully where if you didn't have the music and if you didn't have the movement, if you didn't have this, it wouldn't mean the same thing, right? But they all merge into something else.
Yeah. I mean, you can't tell an actor transformation, ontological intermediality. Like, I mean, anything. What? Synthetic intermediality, just leave me alone. But the conversations that we have as colleagues could translate into rehearsal hall in ways that they can speak to the actor better than I can. So, you know, if the dialogue doesn't seem to cross over, as you were pointing out, it's normal actually, because you know, I mean, eventually, maybe more advanced actors or students in the master's program could actually take those concepts and integrate them themselves, which we do in the MFA
We
program.
have an MFA in theater practice ware they work with physical concepts and theoretical concepts. And I have a grad seminar I do with a colleague, and we do together theory and practice. It's a 4-hour class, and it begins with something physical. It goes into conversation with Pete and I with theory and practice, And then the students take on a body, it could be a gestural body or a gendered body, and they create a seminar from it, and then we come together and talk at the end. And the seminar that the students create, these are grad students, is completely physical and theoretical. And those performances that happen in that class deal exactly with what you're drawing.
Perhaps not so much at the au premier cycle, but
Oui.
definitely, we also have a PhD in performance studies, so
Yeah.
that conversation.
So that happens
definitely
there.
has
But that's also very true, because this was with the BFA,
Yeah.
right? And with that's much more of its own kind of program.
Mhm.
And this is where we'd like a production like this to help spark some of that conversation.
Yeah.
To sort of
And
say,
this was
is there any
2011,
way that
right?
we could open that up a little bit?
Yeah.
I still believe, just from my own background in theater training, I believe it's very important to tune the instrument, understand about the voice, about presence, all those things. But in answer to your question, wouldn't it be wonderful that if at least for part of the week in the afternoons, or at certain points, that you're also looking at working with technology, working with intermediality, and where you can get rid of character and we're just into performing and using task and help them train to see that aspect as well. And that's where we get into, there's only so much time, and then there's also in terms of perspectives of different perspectives within the program itself. But I think we'd like to see even more of that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the undergrad level.
Yeah.
Because they have it's interesting, they have a very, they improvise physically a lot in different ways than you've seen here, but they create their own work and they work physically. But that doesn't cross over into their acting training as much. So when they're asked to improvise vocally, they know it in terms of the physicality, but they haven't really connected it to what they call theater. And I think those things are all merging. I don't think the separations are necessary. But those separations still do exist.
But
in the training, which is unfortunate.
If you had to think like right now, improvise a day of idol training for an interactive actor, you have to put a program together. What would it be?
I would say they'd warm up together for maybe an hour, physically and vocally together, and then what would happen?
I think we start playing with some actual technology.
Yeah.
Because I think you can never sort of guess what that is until you're really working with
Yeah.
it and see what it's like to go in front of that camera. And then how does that transform you, and what do we do if we slow that down? What do we do if we speed that up? Maybe it's better to do that in intensive moments during the year, or have your movement voice training first and go into that. Because this was very much, even though we still had character to some degree for certain characters, it was also a lot about the reconditioning. Just saying it's okay to make a mistake in a way in our rehearsal and use it. So much of that is the accidents that we went, oh, let's use that. There's another point where Alice, she does the fishmonger speech, we were just on a break, and she went up to the mic and she just started playing around. And I said, oh, this is like a Lenny Bruce stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
So we still have her being old. She goes to the mic, crosses over, she does it. We got the big close-up of her doing it, and she's doing the stand-up in New York sort of thing. It makes no sense, but we use the accident, and that happened time and time and time again. And to let the actor know it's okay to do that. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to know exactly what it's all going to be, and look for those accidents. And then when you get scared that we've got so many scores, trust that it will still be there, and that like almost the next day we can see a path and we know what to get rid of, what to keep, how to rearrange. That's a huge part of the deconditioning, is that safety net of the script, of that not being there, and having to trust that the work will start to emerge out of it. That's hard to do.
I put them behind the camera too. I
Yeah.
get them to manipulate the technology, as you were saying.
Yeah.
I get them to use the technology that's going to use them in a way. Get them to manipulate voice, play with the consoles, whatever it is that they can do to actually transform their relationship to the various media. And then film each other. So how become the perceiver, become the observer that they are not used to being.
Yeah, I think putting them in the witness position of what's going on allows a certain distance to develop between what they're seeing and what they're perceiving here and what's being created here, and that we can switch those roles so that inside they can learn how to zoom in and zoom out as an actor on stage, and as a person creating work, they can zoom in and zoom out as well.
But who has that kind of time, though? I mean, you could imagine how much time this would take, right?
But like the shadow piece at the end there, I mean, that was also another moment that we were on break, and Matt just went to the camera and started fooling around with it, and I'm like, whoa, we want to use this in some way, you know? And those are the accidents that do it. Yeah.
So, just so I'm clear, these were actors, not dancers?
They're actors.
Very impressive.
Yeah, they have 3 years of acting, of dance training, and I have a colleague, and it's a really strong physical program.
And is it modern dance training that's in the acting program?
Yes, it's modern and classical. They get 2. And also they create their own work. So they create their own physical work. And they have a lot of creative freedom inside the physical portion of the acting program.
And did I understand correctly that you created this over 10 days?
We had 10 days before we had to get into the theater. And then, and actually the first week was the sign school and the vocabulary. So what we did is we got into the theater, and rather than, this was a deconditioning of the technical program, I would say, and the production management of our department, was to say, you know what, we're going to treat this like dance. And we're going to be building the cues while we're finishing building the piece, and maybe a while before I get back to the light, because now I'm working on this. There was so much multitasking going on, and again the same sort of thing with the technical people, of them feeling very unsure. Wait, we're supposed to have all the cues, we're supposed to have all this. This is and always reassuring. No, this will take time. So we had another 10 days of tech in there. About 10? Yeah, maybe 10. And then really trying to maximize that time, and almost like painting, like it's like art in a way of trying to compose the piece once we're in the space together, yeah. And so there was a lot of interweaving of that kind of work on the space itself. But yeah, 10 days before we got into the theater.
And with the music, was it commissioned music?
No, it was we have somebody who went through our program and is now on staff. He's very good and very quick, and we've worked together several times. So I provided him with a bit of videotape, but then he came in and we did the music within 2-3 days. Okay. Yeah. We were able to communicate. We have a similar language as well, so we could go really fast on that. But he's very good as well. I think we've done everything with that. Yeah, it was a challenge. It was fun.
Thank you for sharing the beautiful work. What we saw today is remediated.
Yeah.
Live performance turned back into cinema, complete with crossfades and pans and double pitches and so on. But you worked very hard to be in the piece to be authentic with the timing of the video and the movement, how it all went together visually. Then somebody turned around and made a bunch of decisions for you, or you did yourselves in the making of this film that really was another layer that you may not have wanted. So
very true.
Often the case
this is very true.
Our work, I think we can turn it into something.
No, I know.
Just it's not that at all.
Yeah. No.
Well, it was just to get someone to do that was also difficult, because they had their own way of videoing, and it would have been even worse than this. So we worked with someone, and the crossfades came into what he was doing, and we didn't have much say about that, because we would have had to sit with him in the room and edit with him.
Yeah,
we didn't have the time.
Or a single shot.
No, absolutely, a single shot. A single shot or a couple of shots.
That doesn't do. Well, you can't really video live performance. It's another translation, as you're saying, of the work. It gives you're seeing a mediated version. You're not seeing the real work.
Yeah, that's right.
So we're trying to give you ways to imagine what that could have been like, but of course it's not.
Also, what I found, because I appreciate what he did, and it was a lot of work, but with the close-ups, the piece falls apart on this, to me, because when you were in the theater, you got everything in one picture. And so, and you sort of saw with the archive one of how tall that screen was that I had. And with that, that's always present and always changes. So it's almost like a light installation of its own, or a light box of its own. So if it had been just back there and just an archival, you would have had more of the sense of Alice being really old. As soon as we get close, it becomes this other kind of, it becomes almost like a bit more theater feel. In the piece itself, when we were in the theater, it was much more like music, much more like a mix of media. It was like just an image that kept changing and changing and changing. And we do with this. Yeah.
It's so very frustrating. And I don't know what to, I don't know that there is a solution at this point.
I know,
to that
I
problem,
know.
how to present this kind of beautiful intermedia work back into a cinema.
Yeah. I mean,
Well, it's almost like you don't want to give it video.
Yeah,
You want to maybe, in another translation, in another work I do, it's never video, it's just photograph. Because sometimes I think a photograph captures a moment in time that stopped, and from the stopped moment, you can imagine more into it.
Yeah.
So we've forbidden video of it. It's only seen as photography.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, one of the things it does, like, he was so proud of it, so.
Yeah, we were, and
it was
so,
a good
yeah.
situation. But was, especially with the 6-minute clip, that one, because that one is in real time, that 6-minute, the very first one we showed you, that's all real time. But it does give a bit of a sense of a flow that the production did eventually have. But yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, and every time it goes close into Alice, I'm like, yeah, into that. Yeah, thank you.
So thank you again. It's really a beautiful piece. When you mentioned at the end, the last clip that we looked at, that you were struggling, or the actors were struggling with time, their relationship.
Yeah.
So what strategies and techniques did you use to assist them?
A lot of it was, how did we do that?
We created that.
We created
last
yeah,
bit,
yeah,
and we
yeah.
just kept saying, go slower.
Well, no,
we had some of them go out into the audience to
Yeah.
see.
We had them watch each other, and I think at one point I went really slowly into things. I gave them a sense of weightiness. So if
You showed them with the chair.
Yeah, I showed them, because I had to do this a lot as a performer. So I just showed them this really, really, really.
Yeah.
And I kept saying, imagine that you're looking at this and it's honesty inside. And then I had other people do it, but then that became.
Yeah.
You know, but because they're young, I mean, it's really different. The way that I could get at it best with certain actors that were very successful was I asked them to imagine it inside their own body. Like, what waits them? What is it for them that they feel really connected to the floor and at the same time the ceiling? So I gave them compasses that were physical languages that vocabularies that we'd already discussed. But that's a question of imagination. Some have to, able to imagine that, but we tried.
Yeah,
That was the one that worked most successfully.
Yeah, we got close.
It was tricky though.
Yeah. So the idea with that was with only Alice would be in real time, trying to cross over to a TV studio or whatever, and everybody else would be in this other time signature. And we just slow that down by another, 40%.
Yeah.
I think we have what we need there. Yeah. Also wanted to mention for you, not only the 10 days, but I came back from Leon's and I started rehearsing the next day. So it was, take me back 2 weeks before we started rehearsing. I had no idea what we were going to make. So we used that to our advantage, which was the unknown, and not being sure what was going to happen, and being excited by that possibility.
And also to say, this was filmed the first night, and I would say as the actors did the run, we did 10 shows, they got better and better and better, because their own innate talent as actors and performers actually made them understand it from the audience, from actually feeling the audience, watching them, and they started to understand in the timing of the whole work how that had to be slower, and so they got richer and richer and richer. So a lot of it is just needing to have an audience for them to really understand.
Can I ask you a question about that? You mentioned that it's different once the audience is watching them, but you're also very clear that a lot of the time you don't want them to feel that they're the main presence, because the image is the main presence, if presence is the right word. And I noticed also that in Venia's introduction, this idea that live presence is no longer the central part of the performance is very central, but does that actually work? Can you, working with actors, young or not, really make live presence recede? Or does it not always come to the fore?
I think it's totally possible. And I was saying there's a brilliant article that Bill Viola wrote, probably about 10 years ago now, about image and vibration. And I think as an actor, you can sense a vibrating screen. You can sense something that isn't human as a presence that you're working with. And as all those things you're working with on stage start to create some kind of music, and you can hear that music as a player inside of it. And you can understand that you're a part of that whole thing that is almost musical and spatial and all those things. And I think that's entirely possible. Yeah.
So they can still be the presence, right, of the performer helping you with that whole.
But it's just a part. It's a matrix that's moving and happening all the time. And those things that you understand your part and the musicality of that.
I mean, what would be interesting now is to be able to work with some of those actors again, not necessarily on this, maybe, but a whole other piece, and see whether they're able to catch on to things quicker now that they've had that experience, right? Of that it's not all about the text and the character.
And that includes also another way that we'd be like working with totally chaotic in another way, that it would just be able to start here and explode it out so that everything starts together, the image, the timing, and you guys have to figure this thing out from this very chaotic place that creates writing, not the other way, which is we work writing to create imagination, but you could do it from any point of view if you had a kind of understanding of that stuff that you would do.
Okay, well, do you have time for more questions if you'd like? If not, we can wrap up. Yes.
Do any of you function as in the traditional roles of choreographer, director? So in the process of decision making, did the buck stop here with one of you?
I conceived the piece and was the director, and then Lynn and I did the choreography together. And Lynn was present in every rehearsal. And we just kind of went back and forth.
This was a conversation, and then this was a conversation with the actors, and then they had their conversation.
So it was a very different kind of experience for them in terms of how we collaborated. This was our first collaboration, but we have a very similar language, which really helped. And then the actors themselves, they contributed in terms of the improvisation and things that we find, and so we really felt that all was collaborative. And the designer, this was her thesis project, and that was quite a wonderful experience. I brought her down to Yale with me, and we knew we wanted the space to be white, but we ended up bringing in tones of gray from the box itself. And then the dramaturgy of the piece actually became like the separate things in the box. So we're going from this to this to this to this. So we ended up taking a lot of that and bringing that into the design.
What was the final running time?
An hour, I think an hour 15. Might be an hour 20, I can't remember. I think it's an hour 15. Yeah.
So no intermission.
Yeah, so it just runs, and it's not too long, and yet you're taking in a lot of information, and that's long enough, right? With that, because you read quite a bit of it.
Okay, well, I must say it's been lovely to have a slow, not a hurried presentation, but to have time to actually get into the piece. And I thought that your relation to time was one of the most interesting aspects of the way you worked with these students and presenting. So thank you so much for taking us through it. And it's the lunch break you have till 2:30. There's plenty of time. I just wanted to mention that there is a university restaurant that you can go and have lunch at. I think it's like €8 or something. And you just need to go out into the food Sensier, which is if you come out of the building, turn left, and you arrive at T-junction, that's the Rue Sensier. Turn right into the Rue Sensier, and right again. And building on that corner is the university restaurant. So there is, I'm sure there'll be even up downstairs as well, they should have a little map to give you. But there's also loads of cafes in the area, of course, it's that important. It's a lovely place, it's a nice place to have lunch outside as well, so do enjoy that if you're in that place. And I recommend the Jardin des Plantes, which is just beside the university restaurant, so which I've kind of walked around. It's lovely. Thank you again to all three of you for presenting. Thank you.
Sorry. Bonjour, oui, c'est ça, on est dans le France.
Hi, yes. I'm Rodrigo. I'm working for the Observatoire. From the Observatoire. Yeah, okay. We are a group of students in the conference, taking some information about what is happening in all the conference. So I would like to see if you could say something about this actor training, the idea of this new kind of actor training for this.
We could do.
Yeah, what we could do. Yeah, but it's like 3 minutes. Could I record?
Absolutely.
You okay? Yeah, could be you too. Like just to, because we are recording some appointments, some people who are participating here, and to put it in the website. I would like just some words about this possibility of a new network training to work with technology, and what questions maybe we put for the but like a 3 or 4 minutes, it's okay. So I would ask you to say your names, institution, and to speak. I think it's okay. Yeah, all I could do is just
Yeah, and we performed it. We performed
So I arrived and found out back. So I arrived and found out that about 10 years ago they had recorded 45 minutes of elevator actor and motion capture of myself to record. Right, and they told me nothing was in there. So then I found out that I was working on a show supervisor.
Wasn't that the Arsenal? Where was it?
This is a university. So
No, but where was that? Thank you.
Yeah, so
I know, I did it terrible.
collaborating between myself and another unfortunate at the event.
Yeah, we're working with the computer science.
Yeah. So, absolutely, yeah. So, Evita, who's an animation specialist, we the 3 of us came together and sort of worked over the course of a whole summer, trying to sort of devise and create stories and connections and create a book. How can we talk about the motion capture? Gene, this is where and that is then transformed and bringing in the
Although I think
performance. Then worked with the other collaborator, Jennifer Semple.
And I took that.
For so performers included bits of this narrative from Marcella's life, some of the choreography.
Oh, yeah.
Right, so kind of the things that I'm very happy to talk about are those moments where we did duets with Marcel. So we took the live captured motion from Marcel 2 years ago and have performance and so you get the live performance today performing by himself in mind, and then above you can see the motion captured as Marcel in the live motion captured performing interaction against all that sort of that separation of the invisible. So
Totally, we're working with that too. We haven't done a lot of motion capture, but, and in that direction.
sure. Well, and
You know Leo, the Circle of 11? Oh, you have to see Leo.
okay.
Yeah, you just find Leo. Okay, are you?
I can.
Okay, you have to see it now. I'm so excited about this project. I actually wrote a paper about it.
Leo, the circle
Circle of 11.
of 11.
Circle of 11. Yeah, Circle of 11.
And I think there is
So,
a map, but it's not, the direction is not
Yeah. So tell me what you think.
Wow, yeah.
Turn the sounds on.
That we can have it on that. Are you still connected?
Joining the rest
Of course.
Oh, really? It's an arrow, but they have to put it together.
So what are we looking at? They tilted. So one is live, one project, and you're trying to, in the video, you're trying to be able, so you saw Leo? I saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
very good.
I wrote a paper on this. So what one doesn't mean is love. So the environment, then it gets animated later on. Drawing the animation live from her side, and yeah, if you, I don't know if I have the whole copy of it, but I don't know if I'm allowed to share. But you know, if you can get it, that's not on the entire video, especially if you give me money. Yeah, check it out.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you.
There's a lot of this is but this guy is good. Wow, but the reasons we have all the time is reincarnation of legal. That tilts the stage completely and the acrobats from the bed, you know. I just saw it. Oh, it's the new Lepage, yeah. Well, the new one.
Right. I
Oh, yeah. I do, surprisingly.
He's quite the creator.
That would be great. Yeah. So you're the second department?
So I joined.
Ohio State.
Okay, great.
Hi.
My name is
Nice to meet you.
So I'm co-appointed between the Department of Theater and ACAD, the Advanced Computing Center of Art and Design.
Okay.
So I started as a performer. In my youth, became a set instructor, became a sound designer, became a videographer, left the theater and became a videographer, returned to the theater with those skills, became a video designer, and then decided I really missed school and that environment of academia, and now sort of living in the computer world. So yeah.
Yeah. The fun place. Yeah.
They're having conferences.
Yes. Yes.
We're going to BSI in Denmark.
Well, yeah, we're presenting on Friday.
Okay.
I believe in the same session slot that you guys.
Yeah, you in the same.
Yes.
Ohio State. I'm
Janine Thompson. Okay, I've seen the visual.
And now you have your.
Very nice to meet you. I'm also a choreographer, performer, movement specialist, and also director. And we created the work, but it's realized it was like,
Yeah, should be an email.
I mean, your whole meeting.
Any kind of connection that we can make.
Get them
Kids
there.
sit here, people like,
Yeah, that's okay, you know, that's a job.
well, I often describe myself as a translator. Really, but as a translator. Coming to the meeting and being able to, answer. It's like, how do I answer that? Because she doesn't even know the technical. Like, this table, I do that, you know, like, no, she's gonna be yes.
I programming language, no. No talking about programming. So the thing is, but that's what I like about the difference between programmers and computer people and regular techies is the computer people. I'll come back with something, you know, so they go, they work on it, they bring it back, you know.
Yes.
I don't have to even
No,
think
right.
it, you know. That's what I'm saying. You guys want to grab one? You guys
Yeah,
want-
yeah.
what-
I would love to grab
what-
Yeah, they came out of ground, cutting down, and then I would focus on myself about 25 years.
Voilà. Raphaël Doyen. Pardon, j'ai pas de match parce que ouais, c'est comme non, en fait, moi, je vais être présidente de séance sur la formation demain matin. Et je me disais que j'aimerais bien présenter certains concepts, et je me disais que je donne pas un article sur Internet. Ça, ça l'article qui va mais il faut vous envoyer le PowerPoint.
Je donne la carte.
Ouais, ok, super. Ok, c'est adorable.
We both totally love their presentation. We got a lot out of it, and actually the potentially kind of in the future.
Un laboratoire critique de mon essai de
Very nice to meet you.
c'était pas et moi j'avais une vidéo là-bas en fait parce que c'est un la technique, parce que c'est dur, parce que moi je travaille un petit peu sur la et je me vois comment avec les et je dis à l'heure ce temps quoi. Et après on va faire un peu de technique. Voilà. Ouais, et du coup, moi, alors, c'est un peu
And all of the challenges so the struggles with reverse narrative of those lives. And they're not. So a lot of people, no density.
Me too.
Yeah, so I don't identify with one or the other.
Right.
I always identify them together.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
But you're teaching actors, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So it's different, right?
Yes. So why are we doing that?
Dancers don't do that.
Often I
They just
often
have that.
Yeah.
Especially, yeah, yeah, we can have a whole conversation about that. Yeah, we could. Yeah, we could. And perhaps we should.
Coherence.
Should I speak?
Oh,
Yeah, I'm from Belgium. Yeah, in Belgium. He
okay.
was a road festival at Kingston University in Antwerp, and he was there last year.
Yes, I was there last year and I saw the performance.
Oh, but then I met you. That's
Yes,
right.
yes, you met me.
Yeah, you were there because in Antwerp. I remember I saw your face during one
me of somebody.
Yeah, I know.
Somebody, but I
Exactly.
was just telling them that the students, our students, are not used to
No,
physical training.
he said it was just, and it was really hard.
And he was shocked because they were shocked. It was a kind of complicated situation. They're not used to anything.
Yeah.
He said,
He said, except they all dressed in this.
he said you should bring your sports clothes with you because you're going to do physical teaching.
Have you lost your bag?
This is your name, you know. I don't know if that is yours.
Yeah, yeah, it was kind of funny.
Where they came.
Oh, sure.
Oh my God.
But then I need the letter of invitation.
They're really actually about they change in the sense and really in the ritual sense of the word. They have to kind of
Okay, there's,
Yes,
this.
yes.
because afterwards they
And this, no, I think
all
this
you
is.
need is like a mixed feeling and a group.
I think we do this.
Also, they even
I think it was.
See you again.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Oh, nice to meet you too. Yes, very much. Did you have
Yeah,
these?
they even asked me when I should.
Yeah.
And I think
So,
it
I
was this, so it's not the end, because now it's over.
It's over. And
I
maybe
have
we
to
could
arrange
just
to have
start
a
it.
trip nearly, and if
Yeah,
I
you
get
could
a
drop
job,
that.
I now
Yeah.
go somewhere, depending on what plans I do, but if it's
Sure,
try
yeah,
to
sure.
move the workshop to the beginning of the year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
That's thanks to thanks to
Pete. Yeah.
we're going to have lunch, and if you'd like to join, you're very welcome to.
Sure.
Come with us, so.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
Britain knows the area, so that's good.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. This is Danya's. Just gotta make sure she's got that.
I just, I'm registered now. What did I?
You just need to decide that
This,
it's yours. This
This
is.
is all done yet. Well, don't have the interview.
You should get her to.
Yeah, no, let me check her stuff. Where did you?
Well, in Antwerp, because last year I went there with this other project I'm working on, we read in distance, and we did it with equals, with Belgian dramaturg, but I had this Belgian, I love Belgian people.
But equals different.
Now he's living in Vienna.
Yeah,
Yeah, now he's in Vienna. Yeah, yeah. And so, but I met Pete at the University of Alberta, but I connected with him like, yeah, he said Vienna, Belgium, because we had a similar in before. So he was there to direct the students at the university.
Yeah, to go to a workshop.
To do a workshop with them, and they'd never done anything. So it was just like, at the end of their year. So, but it was very successful. I saw the performance. I loved it.
But I think really happy. They were happy something that
Yes.
changed them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ritual experience.
Yeah, no, it was very, and I really enjoyed it. That's where we really doing that.
But when you were talking about your program, I was immediately reminded about this because I said, I know this. I heard about this program from Pete. And the difference is so huge to what is happening in different Belgium.
Yes.
The Orange University is very theoretical. There's not an actors program at all.
Yeah.
And then you have the actors program, managers, and they don't want to have to do anything with the university. They like to know you want theory.
Yeah.
They don't want you acting something.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, there's really attention. Well, it's getting better now.
Yeah.
The last years, but when you put on connect, so now you can collaborate.
Oh, good. That's good.
Yes, finally.
Finally, yeah. It's like that. I mean, it's still, even in our department, we have an amazing project.
She's been interviewed?
Oh, she's been interviewed.
You don't like that? I was the
That's gonna join us.
Yes, okay.
Hello.
Hi, I'm good, yeah. Hi, did you? Okay, okay, I should learn my stuff before the other paparazzi stuff. They're part of the research group.
Yeah, I know, they interviewed us as well. Sweet.
C'est ok pour vous si je le mets sur le